what opportunities do you see for lawyers to advance welfare of communities and businesses?
Kenya is becoming one of the most litigious countries in the global south. At the community or grassroots level, sometimes and most of the times, unfortunately, not many people know that they need lawyers. Lawyers will come in to bring sanity. Lawyers will come in to help businesses grow. If you ask a lawyer what is 1 + 1, they will ask you what answer you want so that they defend that answer.
Welcome to this episode of the Executive Review Podcast. My name is Okinda, and today I'm hosting a lawyer. He's called Ogada. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Rick, for having me. So my name is Ogada Obila. I am a lawyer by profession. I have more than 3 years experience in practice. I am a partner. I co-founded a firm called Ogada Advocates, where we run the legal business. We do legal business. We do what a law firm does. And yes, that is it.
That is it. And we are going to be talking about the law business in the streets, in boardrooms, and in courts. And Ogada will be taking us through that. Welcome to the production, Ogada.
Thank you, Rick.
It's a pleasure. I've been looking for you, and finally you're here.
Thank you.
I'll take you through some quick fire questions before we get into the topic of the day.
Sure.
Fast forward, will you choose Mahatma Gandhi or Nelson Mandela? Who inspires you most?
Nelson
Mandela.
Yes.
The second question, defense or forward? I know you watch football.
Defense.
Yes.
This was not about football. It's about law.
Actually, the moment you asked me defense or forward, what came into my mind is law. So
Yeah.
that's why I say defense.
Okay. But you're always forward, advancing. You're so passionate about what you do. And I really love that. That's why I invited you to this podcast. I'll ask you the third question. Speaking or writing? You know, lawyers like communicating. So how do you communicate best? Through speech or written?
Written. But if you asked me speaking or writing, I would still choose written, because even when I'm silent, the words will still be out there.
That's quite a thing. And striped or plain? We're talking about suits.
Today I came in plain, but let's say today I'm going to meet someone very special, or maybe I'm having very high level meeting. Which suit will I do? Plain one.
Plain one.
Yes.
Plain one, and plain it is for today. And lastly, bar or bench?
Bar.
The bar.
The bar.
The bar every day.
The bar. And so I pray that it remains the bar forever.
And I want us now to look at how the law business is structured in Kenya. Now, legal issues happen everywhere. And I want us to narrow down to the streets. That is the community where we live in. Community issues that necessitate the need to have a lawyer within the society. And also the boardroom-driven decisions that bring on board the need to have lawyers, but also the court, the place where judgments are made about cases being petitioned and being defended. So how does the law business look like in Kenya?
Of course, it is more in the courtrooms. It is more in the boardrooms, simply because of the knowledge. People in the boardrooms know that they need the law, or rather they need services of a lawyer. In courts, of course, they already need services of the lawyers. That is why they're in court. Or rather, they have already found themselves either on the wrong side of the law, or they are suing someone who is already on the wrong side of the law. And so definitely they know at some point they will need a lawyer. So it's just a matter of whether they can afford a lawyer or not. At the community or grassroots level, sometimes and most of the times, unfortunately, not many people know that they need lawyers, or even knowing the basics of their legal rights. Because mostly when we interact with people in the community and they tell you what has been happening, when finally they get to reach you, and then you wonder how they didn't raise these several years that this started happening. Someone tells you of how someone had trespassed into their land and fenced the land, built, and they've been living there. And then now you ask them, the first thing that I usually ask that person, for how long have they been living there? And then they tell you, they have lived there for 15 or 17 or 20 something years, and then you just hold your head and you do. Unfortunately, this one might be gone because they do not know that there is a law under what is called adverse possession, doctrine called adverse possession, that if someone lives in your land quietly, a land that you have its title quietly for 12 years, they have a right to petition the court to cancel your title and give them the title for that land. So long as they have proved that they've been living there consistently without interruption for 12 years and peacefully with your knowledge, the court will grant them that.
You know, we have many Kenyans in the diaspora who buy land in Kenya, and then most of the time they're not around, and maybe someone can come and set up a business in their land or even a homestead. So that's how land is grabbed.
Yes.
What about public land? Because you see people ring fencing public land, gazetted areas like forests and riparian areas, and they settle there for a long time. Then over the years, someone says, this is public land, you need to leave. Does that apply also for public land?
No, it doesn't apply for public land. It only applies for private land.
For private land.
Yes.
Okay, still talking about the law business and how communities should be aware about this. We see a lot of litigation in the Western world. Let's say in the developed world, litigation rate is high. Any small thing is a court issue. But in Kenya, I don't think the country is that litigious. How would you compare the two parts of the world, whereby we have one side of the world where the law business is for the elite and the knowing, or probably for the vulnerable who are in a crisis, and we have another side of the world where having a lawyer and engaging lawyers is a normal course of business in a day, like in the West?
I think currently where we are, and especially I would say post the 2010 Constitution, Kenya is becoming one of the most litigious countries in the global south, or if I would say, because Kenya is where currently everything and anything will end up in court. Be it government procuring what, be it government changing its system, be it State House painting its walls, be it State House deciding to change the color of its carpet, everything and anything will end up in court. So yes, while before the 2010 Constitution, which is a very progressive constitution because it granted us access to the court and it granted us so many rights, and including public interest litigation where I must not be directly affected with what is happening, but so long as I know that it is affecting some members of the public, me who know that they have a right to whatever they have a right to, I can still go to court on their behalf. So these days then we are getting a change, because before then, where we didn't have the concept of public interest litigation, or even if it was there, it was not heavily supported by the law. Currently, we are having so much litigation because I don't have to be directly affected, especially if it is something that affects a given number of members of the public. Unless it's just something that affects Rick alone, I should not interfere. But if it affects members of the public, and there are several cases where if today they start falling down trees at Karura Forest, even if I don't live around Karura Forest, I have a right to go and petition court to stop them. If today they start some factory around Ruiru, and I live on the other side of town, perhaps I don't even live in Kiambu County, I have a right to go petition the court to stop that.
People are also participating in the parliamentary processes. When you send MPs in parliament to create these laws, we have a lot of participation, because initially, I think before 2010 Constitution, would have people speaking in parliament, but largely their constituents have not been involved in getting ideas in the flow of the parliament. I think this is something to do with the public participation. How would you connect that with the law in the streets and the community?
I think that is kind of empowering people, one, to know of the existence of that law and their impact and effects before they come into play. So that if we talk about maybe access to information, or if we talk about, say, Public Participation Act, if we talk about, or is Cybercrime Act, then you first bring it to the members of community, they discuss it, they see how this is going to affect them, they give their views, and then they now give you the mandate to go and pass it, because now we agree it is good for us, or we disagree it is not good for us. If it is a law that is going to affect the pharmaceutical industry, the pharmaceutical industries have to sit down and discuss and say, this is how this is going to affect the industry, this is how this is going to affect us. If it is something that is going to affect farmers, then farmers have to be involved to participate and say, this is how this law is going to affect us, and this is how this law is going to affect us, and we approve of this and we don't approve of this, before it is passed in parliament.
Let us now look into the ethical side of the law business in the streets, in the courts, and in boardrooms. What role do the legal profession play in ensuring there is ethics in community and business engagements?
One thing that a lawyer would help you with to ensure that there is ethics is to look at your engagement. For instance, if you are getting into a contract with someone else, then they will look at that contract to make sure that parties will abide to the terms of those contracts. Because sometimes where we have encountered issues where someone went into a contract without a lawyer, then you wonder, how then did you accept this? Because there is no ethics. Let me even take it to the basics. There is no good faith in that contract. If today you are buying a section or a unit in this building, and the developer is selling you that unit for, let's say, 20 million, and then they just insert a clause, because you know, of course, the moment you buy it and you get your section or title, then the only obligation that will remain, or rather amongst the obligations that will remain on you, is to pay the service charge, of which service charge can range between, let's say, 3,000 to 10,000, let's say, based on use and based on the things that you do around. Now, if they were to include a clause that if you default in paying service charge, then you lose your interest in this property, of course, you see that is unethical. But if you don't have a lawyer, you might not know, or you might not go into details. I'm giving that as an example of what I've seen in a real agreement, where someone was buying a property and they had such a clause. Let's say you supply eggs to this multi-billion company that wants to give eggs to their employees for breakfast. So the only thing that you supply is, let's say, 30 crates, maybe a month, or let's say a week. That is little money. And then they put in that contract that in case of dispute, the dispute will be resolved through arbitration in London. If there's dispute, maybe what you're claiming is 300,000, and then they want you to travel to New York to go claim 300,000 for arbitration, which you're going to pay an arbitrator more than 300,000. In fact, your ticket only will be that 300,000. They're discouraging you from arbitration. So sometimes those clauses can be unethical. So most of the times when you have then a lawyer, they will advise you that this one is a red flag. This is a community in Mombasa where there was a factory that was set up. It was a metal processing company that was using lead, or the lead metal. Now, they set up sometime in 2007. And then the emissions were affecting the community around. And it was just set, it was an EPZ, of course they are calling it export processing zone, but it was set within a community where their emissions were affecting the people around. So of course the negotiations failed. So what did they have to do? An NGO came in and then they put in a petition. They fought it all the way to Supreme Court. And the end result was they were compensated. They were to be paid 700 million. I don't live there, I don't know whether they were paid, but also the company had to close down. Yes, so that is how sometimes lawyers come in to deal with unethical issues. Because the reason why I call that unethical is how you would wonder how the government approved, how NEMA, that is the National Environmental Management Authority, approved for this factory to be set up in that area, while knowing very well, because they ought to have known, because when you talk about NEMA, they should be having experts who should know that the factory is going to deal in 1, 2, 3 or in A, B, C, D, and when they are doing, this is how they are going to deal with their waste, and this is how those waste are going to affect the community around. How they got to approve that is unethical for me.
That is unethical, yes. And I think you have helped us to really understand community issues. I want us to begin closing this conversation. look at a few major deals that lawyers have been involved in privatization sector. That is the KPC IPO and also the Safaricom IPO and many other IPOs that will be happening in the country. This is law in the boardrooms. Say something about it.
When you're dealing with law in the boardroom, then now you're dealing with people who have the knowledge, or they can pay people to get them what they want. As you've had this joke before, is if you ask a lawyer what is 1 + 1, they will ask you what answer you want so that they defend that answer. They will not tell you an answer that they know or that they believe in. They will tell you an answer that you want, so that if I'm representing Rick and Rick says that 1 + 1 is 11, then that is what I will stick with. It's based on who is paying me, who is paying my bills. So sometimes it's a little bit skewed towards meeting what the clients want. If Rick wants to do XYZ in this company, then I will tell them the legal ways of doing XYZ and the legal ways of promoting their business, the legal ways of expanding their business, and sometimes even the loopholes in the law that can help them expand. You know, sometimes the loopholes are not bad. They create flexibility. Like, for instance, a very good example is when mobile money started in Kenya, the government said that it will be self-regulatory, so that the players in the industry will self-regulate, and that has helped Kenya be one of the most advanced mobile money countries where mobile money has really progressed as compared to any other country in Africa. Let me give you an example. Digital credit providers. For a long time, they were not regulated. But then now, the government came in to regulate them and coming up with the digital credit providers regulation. I think it was late 2023 or 2024. It could be, not 2024, definitely not 2024, either 2022 or 2023. Because they started exploiting it. They started giving people exploitative and punitive interest rates. Like, for instance, where you even have Central Bank of Kenya has given the lending rates that is applying to other banks. It would even be 13% for banks. And then you get a digital credit provider giving you a loan and then charging you 90% rate. So that is when the government said this is being exploited, and then the government came in to regulate. But most of the times the government does not run in to regulate because they want the industry to grow. That is the same thing with AI right now. Right now there's a regulation that is ongoing, or rather a draft regulation that is ongoing to regulate AI in Kenya. When it came up, the government did not run immediately to regulate.
Final question. What opportunities do you see for lawyers to advance welfare of communities and businesses in the correlation between law, community, and corporate?
Lawyers will come in to bring sanity, which we've talked about. Lawyers will come in to help businesses grow, because then they will help you to know this is what you need to do, this is what you need not to do, this is what you need to do, and this is what you need not to do. And that will help you not get into some ditches, because they have seen some dangers before you, or out of practice there are things that they have seen that you as a business person who is not in the legal profession might not know. But also for communities, lawyers can support communities, one, by raising legal awareness. That is the basic. The basic. It's not just going to the community when they have issues. We should also go to the communities just to enlighten them about the law, so that at least even that person in the community know they are right. But also sometimes representing them when they find themselves in that side where they need legal representation. So yes, there are so many opportunities for lawyers.
I want us to end this conversation with a quote here from Anatole France. You know that person? I'll be reading a quote, and I'll want you to say something about this quote. The law, in its majestic equality, forbids the rich as well as the poor to sleep under bridges, to beg in the streets, and to steal bread. Anatole France. What did you say of this quote?
The law is not entirely about equality. The law sometimes calls for equity. Mm-hmm. And equity then looks at Rick as he is, different from Ogada as he is. And equity in its strict sense would then tell you that equity does not favor the indolent. So if you just lie on your right, you can't go to equity, you can't go to before the courts of equity and then tell courts that, yeah, that person has been staying on my land for 30 years and now I want it back. Equity does not favor the indolent. And he who comes to equity must come with clean hands.
He who comes to equity
Must come with
must
clean
come
hands.
with clean hands.
Yes.
Ogada Obila is an advocate of the High Court, a partner at Ogada Richu Advocates. He's been our guest today in a conversation about the law business in the streets, in courts, and in boardrooms. I've been your host, Rick Okinda. Keep it, the Executive Review podcast on Semeza TV. Thank you for watching.